Thank you very much for your kind introduction, and I will share my screen and hope that you can now see my slides.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you. So at first I want to introduce my laboratory. We are an official control laboratory, as you just said, and I'm working in the Department of Consumer Products. So we are analyzing about 2,000 samples of food contact materials, textiles, and other body contact materials, and also toys per year. And let me begin with this topic of sustainability. So we all know we have to challenge with the climate change, with limited resources, with the persistent plastic in the oceans, with exposure to hazardous substances in the environment. And so there is a growing desire for a sustainable consumption. And how can we implement that? So some solutions are the development of new packaging material, or we can reduce packaging material and use only as little as possible and as much as necessary. We can ban on single-use tableware, or there are developments of return and refill systems. And if you have a solution with sustainable packaging, then you can advertise with the sustainability, and it makes a financial benefit maybe for your company. So there are a lot of examples for advertising slogans on the internet, and I brought four ones for you here. For example, our films consist of biodegradable cellophane, or our tea bag is made of plastic-free PLA, or now in the bio-based PLA bag, hashtag no plastic, or 100% natural. And the example I want to go with you through this presentation is the slogan, "The cup is only made of 100% bamboo and cornstarch and is biodegradable." And for us as an official control laboratory, always the question is this true? And yes, I was asked if I can tell something about the example of the bamboo ware. So this topic is in our focus about 10 years from now. And how the story began, we got in 2012 the first samples of bamboo ware in our laboratory with misleading advertising. And until 2018, we did migration studies, and we got new research results of the release of melamine and formaldehyde. And also the Federal Institute for Risk Assessment in Germany, the BFR, had some studies, and we put our data together. And the BFR then published also a statement on this bamboo ware. And with this question, how to deal with these products, we then go on and handed the questions out to the European Commission Food Contact Material Working Group, and they just published a bamboo note. So I want to go with you through this presentation and want to show you some examples for this advertising of these products, our researches about material and migration testing, and what happens to the regulations. So at first, I want to say that if you are advertising with food contact material, you have to meet the Article 3, Paragraph 2 of Regulation number 1935/2004, which is the framework regulation for food contact materials. And there it says the labeling, advertising, and presentation of a material or article shall not mislead the consumers. So if we look at my example slogan, what means it to this slogan? You have here 100% bamboo and cornstarch, but if we got the sample in our laboratory, then we identified the material And we see that there is just one ingredient missing, the melamine resin. So 30 to 70% of the products are made of melamine resin, because bamboo fiber and cornstarch need a glue to held together. And melamine resin is a plastic, and it is, or it meets the definition of plastic from the plastic regulation number 10 2011. So this advertising slogan is misleading. And then let me go with you a little sideway and to look at the advertising of biodegradability. My question always is, does the consumer understand the difference between industrial composting and degradation in the environment? So often you think, if you hear, oh, it's biodegradable, I can throw it away and the environment can biodegrade it and everything is fine. But if you look at the definition for the word biodegradable, then you come to the European norm 13432, and it means that you can label a material as biodegradable if within 6 months and 60 degrees centigrade in an industrial composting process, the material is not here anymore. But that's the theory. And in the reality, we see that the recycling or the composting cycles in the German composting facilities are only 6 to 8 weeks. So what happened? These biodegradable plastics are not allowed in organic waste in Germany. They sort them out and they supply it to thermal recycling. So even a material is, in theory, biodegradable, does not mean that it is really biodegradable in everyday life. And the second question I have, it is also unknown if the end point of biodegradation is always water and carbon dioxide, or is it only a small invisible polymer pieces, like if you use the so-called oxo-degradable plastics? And a second question is, what happens in the ocean? So because you have a label for biodegradability does not mean that your product is biodegradable in the ocean, because temperature and conditions are totally different to solve. And the German Federal Environmental Agency explains that composting is the least sustainable way of disposal. And back to our example of the melamine resin. Also, melamine resin is neither biodegradable nor compostable. Then let me go on to our material and migration testings. So because in these products we found melamine resin, we then tested it or migration if the specific migration limits for formaldehyde and melamine are met. So our testing conditions are 2 hours at 70 degrees centigrade with 3% acetic acid. And because these coffee to go cups, for example, are in for repeated use, the compliance is tested at a 3rd repeat. And what I want to show you here is we did these repeats not only 3 times, we go on further and we tested it, for example, 12 times. And what you can see here, if your compliance test is at the 3rd repeat, then you can see that the amount of melamine and formaldehyde does meet the specific migration limit for these 2 compounds. But if you go on and use this material, then you see that the amount of melamine increases over the specific migration limit. So what happens? The material hydrolyzes more and more and get unstable. Then we got feedback that our testing conditions are too strong and that no food stuff is that strong. So we did a little research on this. We had a student and she takes hot lemon drink powder and prepare it in the cup. So she give the powder in it and fill up with hot water and then let the drink cool down. And then we want to make the hydrolysis visible. And for that, we know that there's starch in the material. We used iodine coloring to make the starch visible. And as you can see here on the left picture, there is the cup after a single use. And what happens if you use this hot lemon drink in your cup more and more time? You can see here on the right picture, after 18 times of use, you can see that the spots with starch, which we can color, are increases, which means that here also the hydrolysis of the surface goes on, and so the material is unstable. Then I want to go to the legal regulation. It was always the question, is bamboo the same as wood? So because in the plastic regulation, there is a listing for wood, floor and fibers untreated, number 96. And botanically, bamboo is a grass and not a wood. And we handed out this question to this FCM working group, and they handed it on to the EFSA, and EFSA make an opinion to this, and it came out that there's no legal basis exists for the use of bamboo floor as an additive in plastics. So because it is not clear what wood just, or if different types of wood are just the same behavior. So what is the consequence of that? That bamboo ware is not legally on the market, and that you have to apply for the submission in the positive list also for other natural fibers, for example, for rice husk and wheat straw and coffee powder, which is also used as a filler in plastics. And what is the problem of all this? I think the technology are still in an early state of development. We have an unclear or missing definition, for example, what is bioplastic or what is meant by bioplastic. We see a lack of knowledge or information within the supply chain or to the customers, and also a lack of legal knowledge. So every material in contact with food must comply with regulation number 1935/2004. And new developments must be tested for safety in advance. And if you have new substances or polymers you want to use in your plastic, then they must be applied for at EFSA to get listed in the positive list. So I have here one example for you, the listing of sunflower seed hulls. They were applied and got listed, and you have here some conditions how to use them. So let me conclude my presentation. That natural alternatives for synthetic plastic often mislead the consumer. We can see it in our laboratory that there is a lot of fancy advertising, and the product does not meet these advertising. Biodegradability does not yet guarantee biodegradation in everyday life. Here's a big example, the polylactic acid. Biodegradability is only tested for industrial pathway after the European norm 13432. And what we can say is that within the bamboo ware, we did a big step of clarification, for example, with legal regulation. But with other materials, there is still a lot of work to do. So I'm at the end of my presentation, and I want to thank you for your attention.